Lab 7, FM synthesis on the modular. This is similar to Lab 5 in that you're going to patch something up and then just capture a bit of it so I can check that off that you have done it. Part 1 couldn't be simpler. It's literally just a sine wave out of an oscillator into the VCA, and then you play some of it. So take the pitch output of the MIDI interface. Go ahead and mult it because you're going to need to send it more than one place later. And I'm going to use this oscillator. This will be the carrier. The carrier is the one that you hear that goes to the speaker. Take the sine wave output into the signal input. At this point, if you turn up the initial gain here, it should be droning, sine wave, and it should also track the keyboard. Set the oscillator to 16-foot range and tune it. At this point, turn this down so it's no longer droning. Can't hear anything. Take a gate output, mult it. Take one copy into the envelope generator. So this is the final VCA EG. Output of the envelope generator into the control input and bring the control level up somewhere between half and full so that it gives you about the amount of sound you want. Then what I want you to do is just make a capture at time equals 0. Put DP into record. Just, play 5 or 10 seconds. Here's an example. Something like that would be fine. Part 2, we're going to add the modulator. So take the pitch CV into this oscillator, so this will be the modulator. We don't hear this one, we hear its effect on the carrier only. It's very helpful to be able to change the waveform of the modulator and hear its effect on the carrier. So in this case, I'm going to use the positive wave out from the Q141, but before I do anything else, I'm going to take a 4-foot cable and plug it in here, bring this up so it drones, and then tune the modulator to the carrier. It doesn't have to be perfect, just close. Once you're done with that, bring the output of this into the exponential N, and then turn this Q141 gain control all the way up, and start off with this control all the way down. Then when you play the keyboard, you will still just be hearing a sine wave, but as you're playing the keyboard, slowly turn this up, just playing, some series of notes, and you will hear the FM synthesis coming in. So what you're going to do is you're going to do a manual FM capture. So take DP up to the next 30-second increment, put in a marker, and then capture it, and it should sound roughly something like this. So I've got my sine wave carrier, and I'm going to manually turn up the exponential level on the carrier. So the modulator now feeds into it. I'm up at about 5 at this point. If you hold a note and turn it all the way up, you'll hear something interesting. Those are negative frequencies. This is with the exponential control at about 5. If you go to the final VCA envelope generator and turn the release up, way up, like 7 or so, it's the beginnings of bell sounds. For part 3, you're not doing any additional patching. All you're going to do is repeat what you just did, except change the waveform as you're playing, and also change the octave. And then along with that, you can change the amounts. Capture some of that. So now with the exponential level on the carrier at about 5, I'm going to change the waveform of the modulator. This is sine wave, triangle, sawtooth, square wave. I'm going to try that same thing at different ranges. So the modulator currently is at 16 foot. Here it is in the low range. What do you think you'll hear? Right. Vibrato. Triangle. falling ramp or sawtooth, rising ramp, square wave. Come back to sine, try different ranges. So for the third capture, all you're going to do is play around for a little while, changing the range of the modulator and the waveform. For part 4, we want an envelope generator to control the amplitude of the modulator. So of course we need a VCA for that. Take this cable and plug it into the input of a VCA, like this one. Take the output of the VCA back into the exponential input of the carrier. You're going to want to have your exponential all the way up. Now, this gain control will act as this one. But of course now, we can modulate this because it's a VCA. So take this gate out into this gate in of the Moon 511. Take the output of the envelope generator into the control input. Turn the initial gain all the way down and bring up the control level all the way, and then follow the part 4 settings sheet. Here's an example. So initial settings for part 4 for the envelope generator is all times at 0 and sustain all the way up. Now turn sustain on the 511 down to where it's pointing straight up, like at noon. About 5. Then turn the attack up to maybe 2 o'clock on the clock dial. Adjust it. Do the same thing with decay. Do the same thing with release. And you're not hearing much because you have to turn up the release on the envelope generator for the VCA. So then simply repeat those steps on a capture. Start with all times at 0, sustain all the way up. This is all on the Moon envelope generator. Play some notes. Turn the sustain down to half. Turn the attack up. Back down, decay up. Then turn the release up. And turn the release on the VCA EG up. That's part 4. Part 5. This is where things get more interesting. Come over to the MIDI interface, make sure the mode switch is over to the right in position 3. Take a long cable, probably a 4-footer, come from that first jack for the mod wheel, and come into the second input of the Moon 526 mixer. Take the positive output, whichever one it is, I forget, and that is going to come in here. This knob should already be all the way up. So now when you turn this on, and this is all the way up and this is all the way up, and you play a note and then push the mod wheel up, you'll hear some FM, but it's not very intense. So that's the patch that I have, and here's the mod wheel going up. There's some effect. But if I go to the Moon 511 and take the amount voltage control CVN and unplug it, so the Moon 526 mixer is no longer plugged into the envelope generator, listen to how much more intense the effect is. So that's with the mod wheel not plugged in at all. And that's with it plugged in and turned all the way up. So now what you need to do is add an offset. So now here's that same patch with the offset and the mod wheel all the way down and turning the mod wheel up. Now I'm going to switch off channel 1 in the Moon mixer so we're no longer getting that 5-volt offset. Mod wheel by itself. Mod wheel with the 5-volt offset. Here's the triangle wave LFO plugged into the third input of the Moon 526 mixer. And then I turned the mod wheel up. So right now the mod wheel is down. Here it is with the 5-volt offset in channel 1 turned off. Offset back on. with the mod wheel. Now with the triangle LFO being modulated with key velocity. So I feed the output of the LFO into VCA number 2 input. Then I take VCA number 2 output and patch that into the Moon Mixer 3rd channel input. Now I take a long cable and go from the velocity output of the MIDI interface into the control input of VCA number 2. And I'm finding it might be a little much, so I'm going to back down the CV level on VCA channel 2 that's controlling the amplitude of the LFO down to about half. Now I'm going to switch from the triangle output of the little LFO to the pulse or square wave output. So capture a bunch of madness.